Hey, historian Justin Vipperman. I'm out here in Buhl, Idaho, actually coming to you from my vehicle. I've tried to do this video several times outside, and the trucks in Buhl, Idaho are super loud. And so I think this is going to be better for you to hear me as we go throughout this video. I wanted to give you the story of somebody that actually got me started down this path this week of African-American history in the Magic Valley. 4 years ago when we moved back, I was doing some work at the cemetery, and a woman came up to me, which I often get now, and asked me if I knew about this black person in Buhl. She said she had a guy that used to work for her parents called N-word Henry. And although I was appalled that she used the N-word in front of me, I couldn't get Henry out of my mind. And I just kept thinking, who is this guy, and how did I not know about this person? And so I started doing some research and found Henry Fields in Buhl, Idaho. Henry Fields is fascinating, as I know I tell you every week. But Henry Fields moved here in 1915. He had been born to parents who were slaves in Tennessee, gained their freedom after the Civil War, and Henry was born there shortly thereafter. Henry moved out to Buhl, where he became a janitor. He worked for the Boring Drug Company, he worked for a bank as a janitor, and the bank went under not long after 1918. He lost his savings in that when the bank went under, but he decided to start a shoe shine shop, which is this door right here behind me, 102nd on Broadway and Main here in Buhl, Idaho. He went along, did this shoe shine shop. It was called Henry's Electric Shoe Shine Parlor, which he ran for 30 years here in Buhl, Idaho. Henry is very interesting because he's super respected in town. Anytime students would come by and ask him to help with fundraisers, he was in. He did a lot of things, a lot of philanthropy in the city. By all accounts, he was a man of wealth, man of finance, is what they called him in his obituary. Henry ran this shoe shine shop, and in the 1930s put up a thermometer which sat on the outside of the building. And if I could show you the building, there are two holes still there where the thermometer sat. He was seen in the 1938 Times News article, a picture of him with the thermometer that sat out here. And it said that people of finance, that farmers and sheepmen would come by to check the thermometer and then get their shoes shined by Henry. One of the things that it talked about in his effects were that he had pictures of students who he loved. They would come by and he would try to help push education on them, help them in some ways. In some instances, he also paid for people to go to school. Most of these students, if not all of them, would have been white, coming from Buhl, Idaho at the time. In fact, in his obituary, it was said that he was the only African-American in Buhl. However, I found that actually isn't correct, that there were several others, but he was probably the most prominent of the time, being in the Chamber of Commerce and a couple of other fraternities or fraternal organizations here in Buhl. One of the things that is fascinating to me is that in 1925, he speaks out about the banks failing after World War I. He talks about that he lost his savings, talked about where Buhl was at that point in time. There were several other businessmen who also talked about this at that time, and he speaks out about kind of the conditions that are going on before the Great Depression in 1925, and the KKK comes after him, sends a letter to his house. He's the only one, even though several other white prominent men speak out, he's the only one that gets a letter from the KKK telling him that he needs to stop speaking out about banks failing and some of the things that are going on here. In the late 1950s, Henry Fields loses his business with some bad dealings, things of that nature. I'm still trying to do some of the work on Henry Fields to figure out exactly what happened. But he loses all of his savings and all of his money that he had built up, all of his wealth, and relies on the state to pay for things for him in his later years. He dies. He goes to the hospital in 1960. He is put into an assisted living facility, or what we would think is an assisted living facility today, and dies in 1961, November of 1961. The city, because he's such a prominent member, pays for his funeral. So several different people come out and help pay for his funeral, but the city pays for his headstone. On it, it says that Henry Fields was a longtime resident of Buhl, Idaho, and most respected citizen. Henry Fields is the reason that I started down this path 4 years ago of trying to find identifying African Americans in the Magic Valley. His business is still here on Broadway in Maine, boarded up today. But I think it's a fascinating story, something that we all should realize, that these African Americans is American history, right? They were business owners here in the Magic Valley, helping our students go on to college, paying for them in some respects, and somebody that I truly respect. If you're looking for more information on Henry Fields, there's an article in the Times News from 2013 that mentions him. There's a couple of other articles, one about the thermometer that he used. It got stolen at one point, and he paid to replace it, because that's what helped his business, is that these farmers would come up to see the thermometer and then get their shoes shined. So Henry Fields is one of the great, most respected African Americans in the Magic Valley, and I'm grateful to be able to tell you this story. If you're looking for more history, check out my YouTube channel. Check out some of the other stories that I'm doing this month, but also upcoming stories that I'm looking at doing. If you have any interesting stories that you want me to look at, put them down in the comments. Like this video, and let me know what else I can do for you. I hope you have a great day.